Hey Management 4480, welcome to your next class. So today we're going to be talking about Chapter 8, which is Entrepreneurial Strategy and Competitive Dynamics. I have the notes from the PowerPoint I created for you here, and I just wanted to go through the ideas that I included in it. So your book defines entrepreneurship as value creation and the assumption of risk. And when we think of entrepreneurship, I think our mind automatically goes to the woman who starts a business out of her home office, or the guy who starts a business out of his garage. But entrepreneurship can actually apply to several contexts. So it is that startup venture that I just described, but it's also happening within major corporations because we know that companies assign teams within the company to intentionally focus on coming up with new streams of income for the company. Family-owned businesses is also entrepreneurship, and nonprofits are also considered entrepreneurship. In the slides, you'll see the opportunity analysis framework, which highlights 3 factors necessary in order to take advantage of an entrepreneurial opportunity. So the first factor we need is the actual opportunity. We need something to create, some reason to create it. And then the next factor is an entrepreneur who's willing to pursue that opportunity. And then the third piece of the puzzle is that we need resources. And so pursuing these opportunities costs time and money. So we said that the first part of the framework is the opportunity itself. And what that really means is that we need to be able to recognize the opportunity when it presents itself. And so there's a 2-step process there, which is the discovery of the opportunity, so us becoming aware of it. And then there's an evaluation piece. That's the second part. And that's where we just sort of analyze the feasibility of this idea, because we can come up, and I'm sure all of us have come up with these great ideas of a business that we could start or a product that we can sell. But then we have to take that second step and say, is this something I could actually do? And then we said the second factor that we need in order to take advantage of an entrepreneurial activity is resource. So the resources that we're talking about include financial resources, money, human capital, so our skills and knowledge, and then perhaps anyone on our team and their skills and knowledge. We need social capital, so network ties and friendships are really important here. And then the government also offers really valuable resources in terms of the Small Business Administration and small business loans in order to support people who are just starting out. Specifically, when we're talking about financial resources, most of the initial funding for a new venture comes directly from the entrepreneur and or from this person's family and friends. So typically you don't go straight to the bank because you have an idea. You start off with what's in your own bank account, what your friends and family are willing to help you with, and then you kind of grow from there. So beyond relying on your own bank account, some people also do crowdfunding. So I'm sure you've all gotten links from people and emails from people asking for your donations. And then in early stage financing, so after we've actually started our business and we're trying to launch it, then at the very early stage, we may get the attention of angel investors and get some support from them. Angel investors usually are individuals who are willing to invest up to 6 figures in a venture. And then once we have the business rolling and we want to scale it, or we might get support from venture capitalists. So venture capitalists are usually an organization of pool that pools money from multiple investors, and they are typically willing to invest 7 figures and up. So in the PowerPoint, there's this discussion on entrepreneurial leadership. And so it highlights some of the traits that we find in entrepreneurs. And so these include, among the big 5 personality characteristics, higher self-confidence, higher conscientiousness, higher openness to new experiences, and greater emotional stability. But these entrepreneurs typically have lower agreeableness. So I think that's interesting that entrepreneurs aren't known to be that agreeable, but I'm sure there's a level of grit that comes with not being agreeable and being focused on what you want and what you're trying to achieve, regardless of what people around you are saying. So there are 3 common entry strategies for a new venture. So when I say entry strategies, I'm talking about the way that we choose to enter into the market and how we are presenting ourselves. So there's pioneering new entry, imitative new entry, and adaptive new entry. Pioneering new entry means that our new product or service is unprecedented in some ways. We've never seen anything quite like it before. It's a game changer. And so the example I put in the PowerPoint is the first personal computer. So companies had these like huge mainframes that they would use, but the idea of having a personal computer that you could put on a desk in somebody's home was unheard of until it happened. The second entry strategy is imitative. So this is a strategy that draws on another service or product that already exists and has already been successful. And so here the entrepreneur is basically grabbing that idea and introducing it to a new market. And it's the idea that I can do this better than the person who's already doing it. And so the example that I include in the PowerPoint is this company called Nightcap. And so this is a company that actually sells headscarves for women to sleep in order to protect their hair and maintain their hairstyle. So this company was launched last year, and headscarves are something that women have been wearing to bed for generations. And so what I wanted you to see here is that she is launching an entire company on something that people have already been buying, but she's introducing it to a new market. And she's doing a really good job at it, because the traditional headscarves that people have been wearing all along, you can probably buy them at a store for, I don't know, $10. Her headscarves at Nightcap are $98 each. So it's just this new market that didn't know about the idea of wearing headscarves to bed, and they're willing to pay top dollar for an imitated idea. And then the third entry strategy is the adaptive new entry. And so this is when our new idea, our new service or product is sort of based on something that already exists, but we're adding a new element to it. So it's sufficiently different and it provides value in a new way. And the example that I included here is Crystal deodorant. So Crystal deodorant came out in the 1980s, and it was the first of its kind to offer an all-natural clean deodorant option. So we know that people have been wearing deodorant for centuries, right? So it's not a new idea, but it's offering something that is based on something that already exists, but it provides new value in that they've said, we're going to offer you a deodorant that is non-toxic, completely clean ingredients, and they were the first ones to do that. So from this conversation of entrepreneurial strategy, we're going to shift into competitive dynamics. And so this is just about the interactions between competing firms. So it's the threat that one firm issues to another firm, and then the response of the receiving firm. And a threat could be anything from launching a new product to offering a sale, right? And so then when your competitors see that, then they immediately have to think, how do I respond to that? So in your PowerPoint, you'll see the competitive dynamics model, and it starts with whatever the new competitive action is, whether it's the launch of the new product or service, or playing a new commercial on TV. And so then the competitors are paying attention and they're like, oh, our competitor is doing something new. What do we do? So you start with the new competitive action, and then it goes to threat analysis. So how much of a threat is this? What will happen if I do respond? What will happen if I don't respond? And then it goes to motivation and capability to respond. How motivated am I to respond to this? Is this really a big deal? And if it is a big deal and I should respond, am I capable of responding? Do I have the resources to respond? And then you have to consider the types of competitive action you can engage in as a response. So what types of responses are at your disposal? Can you also launch a new product? Do you need to put up a competing commercial? And then we also have to think of, if I respond to this, will my competitor respond again to me? So will we be playing ping pong and going back and forth? So there are all these elements that we have to take into consideration when we notice a new competitive action, a threat in the environment. So after we notice the new competitive action, we next engage in threat analysis. So we're questioning, how threatening is this? And the way we sort of assess how meaningful or disruptive this new competitive action might be is by thinking about market commonality and resource similarity. So market commonality is basically the extent to which we share markets with this competitor who issued the new competitive action. So if we sell to multiple markets, we have multiple segments that we serve, we sell multiple products, and then one of our competitors in one of those markets issued a new product, it probably wouldn't be a big deal to us because we're diversified across multiple segments and multiple products. But if we serve all the same markets, so say we have one market that we serve, and it's that one market where that competitor issued that new competitive action, then we feel more compelled to respond because we are highly dependent on this market. We have a lot of the same markets in common, and so we're less okay with losing here. And then we consider resource similarity. So that is thinking about whether we are on par with the level of resources that our competitor has. So and we can measure that in a couple of ways, right? So sometimes we can just look at the size of the firm to see if these firms are similar in terms of resources, or maybe their revenue, right? And so the question becomes, issuing these new competitive threats, these new competitive actions take resources, time, and money. And so if we have similar resources as competitors, and one competitor issues a new action and then we respond, then who's to say that we won't be going back and forth? Because we have similar resources, so we can afford the same level of competitive actions. Versus if we are maybe dealing with a competitor that is much smaller than we are, and this very small competitor has issued a new product, then we might think twice about whether we respond to it, because it's like they're small, nobody's really paying attention. Or if they are, growing in their growing in the market and they're growing their consumer base, then we could say, oh, we're definitely responding to them and we're going to out-respond them because we have more resources than they do. So you see how our resource similarity and just assessing our competitors' resources is important as we think about whether we want to respond or not. And so we've been talking about this idea of new competitive action and new threat, but there are really two categories of new competitive actions, and it's strategic actions and tactical actions. So strategic actions include things like entering a new market, or introducing a new product, or engaging in a merger or an acquisition. So those are pretty big things. Tactical actions are smaller and they require fewer resources and less time. So this includes cutting the price on a product or service, or increasing marketing efforts, like putting up that new commercial. So strategic actions obviously take longer, they require more thought and planning, while tactical actions are something that we can do in the short term. So after we assess what's happening, the new competitive action, and then we consider the severity of the threat, we have to consider whether we'll respond and how we'll respond. And so our response really depends on our market dependence. So I sort of alluded to this earlier. If our company serves one market and our competitor who issued the action serves that same one market, we are dependent on this market, and so we may be more likely to respond because we don't want to lose any of our footing in this market. And then again, we have to consider our competitors' resources. So if we respond, will this competitor just respond right back? Does this competitor have more resources in order to issue more responses? Is it in our best interest to just not respond at all? And in that case, that would be called forbearance. So that's another option. We don't have to respond to any of these new actions. We can say, you know what, this is not in our best interest due to our limited resources, or due to the fact that we don't really view this as a threat because the company is so small, or this peer might have a lot of resources, and then we'll just be going back and forth and wasting money. Whatever the reason is behind not responding, the action of not reacting is called forbearance. And then similarly, there's this idea of co-opetition, when two peers that are likely somewhat equal in terms of resources just decide not to battle against each other. So they agree to coexist in the same market and just not engage in competitive dynamics with each other, because they know that since they have similar resources and similar product, they can just go back and forth with each other, and they realize that it's not in their best interest. So it's just better, they all do better if they just allow each other to coexist in the same space. So Since we started off this chapter talking about entrepreneurial strategy, I want you to think of a business that you would want to start. So for your next steps, you'll think about this business and you'll describe it to me, and then you'll tell me what your entry strategy is going to be based on your product or service. All right, so that's it for this week, and I will see you next time.